Are DSP IEMs worth it? That is the question that a lot of people have been asking ever since the boom of DSP IEMs. And honestly speaking, it wasn't at the start. It was a little problematic, but times have changed. A lot of companies have released their own DSP IEMs. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Simgot's own releases that have both a DSP version and an analog version. Yes, that's a very interesting proposition for a company to release two different versions of what is essentially the same product. So we'll find out, is it really worth getting a DSP IEM or just stick with the analog gang? Let's talk about the Simgot EW300 and EW300 DSP. First and foremost, thank you to Simgot and Lunsol for sending over the EW300 for my honest review. If you'd like to order one, consider using the non-affiliated link below. Rest assured, all my thoughts and opinion here are of my own. So let's first define what a DSP IEM is, and in the most layman's term, to explain it as simple as I can, think of it as your IEM has a built-in dongle DAC that can sometimes change how it sounds. That's it. I'll put a more in-depth explanation of what DSP is specifically. I'll put some links below, but in the most simplest way of explaining, that is what a DSP IEM is. But before we talk about the whole DSP argument, let's talk about the IEM that we're going to be comparing it to or using as our baseline today, which is the Simgot EW300. Now this is a $69 IEM, nice, for the analog version, and $79 for the DSP. There's also an HBB version for $75, but we don't have that. We're not going to talk about that. We're just going to be talking about specifically the DSP and the non-DSP versions. Now, externally, there is a difference. The DSP version has a really nice matte finish that I really like for aesthetic reasons and not so much for durability reasons, while the non-DSP or the analog version uses the usual Simgot shiny, scratchy, and fingerprint magnet kind of finish that is very aesthetically pleasing until you get your fingerprints and some scratches on it. But that's besides the point. Internally, they are practically the same. Now I've seen posts about like the differences in like the driver technology, or like, sorry, not driver technology, but the differences in the nozzle. But in my experience and in my observations, especially sonically, they are virtually the same IEM, one plug to the same kind of cable. They look different. I don't know how, I don't know why, and according to Simgot, it's basically the same IEM, just a different shell. I don't know. It's the same in my listening experience, so I'm assuming it should be the same, right? So anyways, in terms of tuning, I really like how this sounds. Just look at the graph, right? Just look at the graph and look how closely it follows my balance target. And I would say that that is by design, I guess, because this is the kind of bass that has been a lot more prominent in the last few months. This kind of not necessarily Harmon-like bass, but it is bass boosted with a good amount of mid bass, but not too much to make it muddy. And honestly speaking, this is probably one of the best sub 100, maybe even sub $150 IEM that you can get if you're specifically looking for the best, most versatile sound out of any IEM. Now, to describe the sound, that is warm U-shaped, or I guess warm V-shape. I don't know how to explain it, but it's basically not very a Simgot kind of tuning, because you know how Simgot's been doing like a lot of bright stuff in the past, and they're doing more Harmon stuff. Well, this is a little far away from that. It's so closer, ironically, to the HBB target, which makes sense now considering that they have a collab with Simgot there, HBB and Simgot. And I really genuinely think that the standout feature of the EW300 is just how refined it sounds. That's basically a thing for every Simgot IEM that I've tried. The refinement is just insane, from the most cheap like EW200, oh, it's not the cheapest, but one of their cheaper ones, all the way to the more expensive like the EA1000. Just crazy levels of refinement, and like HBB said, they know how to use the drivers. And the EW300 is no exception, is arguably in terms of tonal one of the most refined EW300. The only thing there's a little small issue that some people might have, is since this is a tribrid, yes, Simgot's been doing multi-driver IEMs recently as well. This is running a single DD, piezo, electric driver, and a microplanar. And because of that, or at least I'm not going to say it's because of that, but potentially because of that, there is a bit of a timbre in the especially upper frequencies that you can kind of hear the sharpness and the metallicness of the timbre, and not necessarily too bad. I would say that coherency wise it is on the better side compared to a lot of other hybrids, just like DD plus BA hybrids. It is far better than a lot of those, the EW300, but it is still present. But I mean, what, like 69 for the analog, 79 for the DSP? What do you have to complain, man? Like we had the Aria back in the day. That was the baseline. Now I believe this should be the baseline at this point. It's just really well tuned. And the thing is, this isn't just the only tuning. You may have the DSP and the non-DSP, but this also has tuning nozzles. Yes, Simgot is keeping the tradition alive of tuning nozzles. This has two, similar to the EA500 original. This has a normal nozzle with the red and, was it red? Yeah, no, it was red, the red and silver. And then you have the pink and gold nozzle. Most of my impressions that I'm talking about are from the silver nozzle. And the pink nozzle, in short, bumps up the bass, lowers the upper mids, but keeps a decent amount of vocal energy. I would say that if you like warm IEMs, this is better. But personally speaking, I prefer the silver nozzle. For one, I prefer brighter stuff. It fits my genres a little bit more. But at the same time, and this is something that no tuning nozzles can change, is that if there's a peak around the mid-treble area and you try to mask that by adding more bass and less upper mids, there's going to be a contrast to it. Like in here in this graph, I'm going to show it somewhere, just the graph here. You can see here that there's a peak all the way up there, and that is resonance peak. I can tell you that it's a resonance peak, not an actual like properly sharp audible peak, but it is present because of the sudden contrast dip into the upper treble. And that is a problem that I experienced with the TRN Conch. It was the worst offender. I experienced that with the Simgot Nuo, but EW300 present, but it's not too bad in my opinion. Overall, I just genuinely think that the EW300 tuning and technicalities and refinement, just one of the best IEMs that you could get. I don't even know what to compare this to anymore. But if you want to see my full written review, yes, I made a written review of the EW300, check the link down below in the description. I also posted it on my other social medias. Please consider following. Yeah. So now, why did I end up talking about the EW300 in this kind of format, not my usual review format? Well, mostly because you've probably seen a bunch of EW300 reviews already. And I want to try something different. And I realized that this IEM, running both a DSP and a non-DSP version, is a very interesting topic to consider, because a lot of people are half and half towards DSP IEMs. They think it's amazing, they think it adds a lot of versatility in terms of the tuning and all of this and all of that. And other people are saying, well, you can't plug it to your own DAC, or you can't play it on your own amp. You can't put it on your favorite devices or in the PC without using the stock one, and I don't like the stock one, so I don't like this. Well, I mean, that's the question, right? Why do you even need to consider DSP in the first place? Now, I have a couple of reasons why DSP is honestly really good. First and foremost, phones don't have jacks anymore. Yeah, I'm sorry to tell you, it's 2024, and a lot of phones don't have jacks anymore. On the budget end, you might still have headphone jacks, and lucky you, stick to those. Or if you're using older phones or DAPs, all of that, perfect. You don't have anything to worry about. Don't even think about it. But a lot of people, especially who are just, chilling and just wants to listen to music, have to deal with either Bluetooth or go with a dongle. And sometimes a dongle is just a little shifty. And I'm not saying that all dongles are bad. I'm just saying that you have to admit that the durability is a little bit questionable. Now, I'm not saying that, again, all dongle decks are like easy to break, but compared to a cable straight into your jack and just plug and play, no need to deal with anything, I would say that that is a much more convenient way of listening to music. And in this and specifically for the EW300, it's using an L-type jack, which is not something I've seen before in any DSP IEM. So always the straight jacks, but the EW300 DSP uses an L jack, which is really cool, very practical. I did not expect it to be like that, or at least be as practical or convenient as I thought it would. But then again, L jacks are just always a good thing, even in like the 3.5mm jack. But anyways, besides the point, another one, mic input. Not everyone needs mic input, duh, obviously, we do not know, but I'm talking about the practical purposes or the practical implications and applications for DSP. And it just so happens that a lot of DSP IEMs, and I think most DSP IEMs, I haven't seen a DSP IEM without a mic, but probably is. But mic input, or having an option for a microphone in the cable for something this expensive, is rare. And it's usually found here in DSP IEMs. And that is great, because if you want to use your IEMs, not just for music listening, but if you want to use it for conference calls, for Zoom meetings, for gaming especially, oh, gaming is going to be great on this, just to tell you, a mic input is really convenient. Like, you don't need to plug in a separate mic like this. You don't have to get yourself like a lapel mic or something like that. Just plug into your phone, into your PC, talk into the mic, bam, that's it. You got yourself an all-in-one multimedia purpose solution in-ear just because of the DSP cable. And I would say, and I would say this is the biggest one for a lot of people, it has the capability to change the sound on the go. Now, this is something that has been more prevalent recently. A lot more companies are coming out with applications for their DSPs, because I would say that back in the day, or just like on the earlier releases of DSPs, it was really only used as an adapter so that you don't have to deal with dongles anymore. But nowadays, companies are being more creative. They're having apps like for Moondrop Link or the Tanch Gem app. They are trying a bunch of new stuff, and one of them is being able to change the sound of your IEM on the go. And you could argue that using an app like Wavelet could do the same thing. But the thing is, some of these apps put the EQ straight into the DAC itself, and that means you don't have to have the app open. You don't have to deal with the compression. At least for me, I experienced the compression when using Wavelet. You don't have to deal with that. It is built into the DAC itself, and you just plug, it saves the EQ profile, and you're done. And you're happy, and you can change it in the app anytime you like, but it gets saved in the app itself, or on the DAC itself. And like I've mentioned, this also means that you don't need to use a dongle anymore, which is very, very convenient, considering that, you know, a lot of dongles nowadays are a lot bigger than they used to be. I mean, you know, smaller options still exist, like the VE Auto, the older Avani and Abigail, but I honestly prefer using just a plug and play this kind of style, because it's more durable. Like I've said, it feels more durable to just have the DSP cable or the Type-C cable straight into the cable itself. So, however, there are some stuff that you cannot do, or people might not like, about DSP IEMs. First and foremost, you can't source roll. There's no option for source rolling. Duh, obviously. What are you gonna plug the Type-C into the different port that you're not supposed to? And a lot of people find issue with that because they want to be able to change the source of their IEMs, and that's perfectly justifiable, because some sources can improve the sound of IEMs, and in the case of DSPs, they might be limited in certain ways. I experienced this personally. I was listening to my phone DSP, and I plugged it into my phone. I listened, and it sounds oddly compressed. I don't know if that's a DSP. I don't know if that's my phone, but I just know for a fact that if I use a different source, and no, I know for a fact that when I use a different source, it sounded considerably better. Not considerably as in it's a night and day, but it is audible enough for you to say, oh, okay, well, I like the convenience, but I want to make this sound better. So whenever I need to, I plug this source instead of the dongle source or the DAC into the cable or the DSP. So that is a very justifiable concern for people to have for DSP IEMs. And another one, durability. I was talking about durability prior in the dongle DACs, and while I do stand by that, I have to say that I don't fancy Type-C connections at all. Maybe it's just me getting used to like 3.5mm jacks just being a lot more durable than Type-C jacks. As I wouldn't say I've broken it, but I've seen broken like Type-C jacks more than I've seen broken like 3.5mm or even 4.4, especially 4.4 jacks. But there's definitely a conversation to have between the durability of the Type-C jack or the Type-C like the end and 3.5mm. And in my experience, and a lot of people would say that Type-C isn't as strong as a 3.5. Plus, you can't charge your phone while listening to music unless you use a very, very specific device to be able to plug audio and charge at the same time. And that's just added cost that some people are not really willing to really to make. So, and the last one that I personally have a gripe with, and I mentioned this with the DAC prior, or the whole source thing, is weird DSP sound. And this was especially present during the earlier days, during the Quarks DSP. There was something issue with the group delay and stuff like that. Basically, there was costs for incoherency. Even if it's a single dynamic driver IEM, the Quarks had incoherency issues where some parts sounded weird, some parts sounded fine, and it was not something a lot of people liked. And unfortunately speaking, it's still somewhat present. It's not 100% present. I would say that I think it's just a DSP doing its job, changing the sound and making it sound weird. But in my experience, DSP IEMs compared to dongle or analog IEMs that go into a separate or a dedicated DAC sounds more compressed. The DSP sounds more compressed, dynamically, transients. Sounds more closed in. The separation isn't as clean. That could be a DAP issue. That could be a DAC issue. That could be a DSP issue. But as for my experience, out of all of the DSP IEMs that I've tried, that is present, and that is something that you could really only do with analog, and that's perfectly fair. I don't think that I would like to listen to that when I'm doing my specific listening, but I think it would be perfectly fine if I'm just going out and about and I need something to listen to, not necessarily analytical listening, but just casual listening. Nevertheless, I genuinely still think that if you're gonna consider a DSP IEM, the EW300 DSP is probably the best that you can pick, and that is by a long shot in my experience, because for one, this is using the tri-bridge system that allows it to just sound much better on analog by default, and a little worse but more tuned and smoother in the DSP version. And that is a feat not only for DSP IEMs but IEMs in general, because Simgot has been known for making really refined sounding IEMs. I've talked about this before, but Simgot is just fantastic when it comes to making these kinds of sound just as good as it could be. And I really appreciate that they opted to go for a detachable cable. And this is a big one. The detachable cable is just so useful, because then you can unplug the DSP cable, plug your own 2-pin cable, and have all the benefits of the analog or the 3.5mm or even 4.4 while still having the option for the DSP, all because it was detachable cable. And at the same time, if you're picking between the DSP and the non-DSP versions, they're virtually the same thing. Like, honestly, they're virtually the same thing. Look at the graph. I mean, I'll probably show this earlier, but look at the graph. This is the DSP on the 3.5mm cable and the 3.5 on the 3.5 cable. And I believe I might show even more graphs here, but we'll see. I don't know. But you basically get the same IEM, but now in the DSP version, you get to pay $10 more for what is essentially more convenient listening with a mic, slight change in sound, and just being able to use it with your phone or with your PC that doesn't have a 3.5mm jack or a 4.4mm jack. And it's just straight up pure convenience. And I have realized that convenience is a very, very big part of this hobby. So thank you so much for watching my video on the EW300 and EW300 DSP, and I really think that DSP cables are potentially the future of audio. I think that convenience can be matched up with like pure analog and digital sound amazingness, and I think that the EW300 DSP is the step in the right direction. And I think that if more companies try to push good quality earphones with the option for DSP that is detachable, it's important, detachable, I genuinely think that audio will become more accessible for more people. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to if you like more of my content, consider subscribing to my channel. If you like this video, like the video, please check out my socials, check out Audio Notions, join the Discord, and yeah, thank you so much. Nice seeing you again. Obodio out.